Welcome back to My Dad Watches The Bachelor. I'm Meredith, and I'm here with my co-host, my dad.
Hey Meredith, how you doing? I know you're feeling a little bit rough today. I hope you feel better.
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather. You might be able to tell by my voice. I've felt better, but I'm such a great co-host that I couldn't just leave the pod hanging this week. We have a lot to discuss. We have fantasy suites, and I have a little personal story that I'd like to share about my weekend that pertains to me and Bachelor Nation.
Oh, do share then.
Okay, so let me just set the scene here. This past weekend, I was in New York City for a little Christmas weekend getaway with my boyfriend. It was a fun time, and he has a lot of cousins that live in the city. One of them had a birthday over the weekend, and he is low-key famous. He's a photographer, takes pictures of famous people and stuff, works with Martha Stewart, Kendall Jenner. Like, he knows people, okay? And he had a birthday party for himself at Ludlow House, which I believe is in like the Lower East Side, which is part of like a club or something, part of Soho House. I don't know all of these New York terms and places, but it's a members only club, something like that. So the only people that can go into his party were members of the club and people that were on the list. And side note, this was the first time I think my name was ever on the list, which was very exciting.
Don't think I've ever been on the list. Go ahead.
I was a little worried I wasn't gonna be on the list as like a cousin's girlfriend, but I made it, got into the party, and we have a good time. You know, there were supposed to be some celebrity sightings, but celebrities are a little flaky. We were supposed to see cousin Greg from Succession, but he was too busy in LA to make it. It's okay.
Which I would have been very excited about because I've been watching Succession. I'm a fan, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not into Succession, but I know his work from Sky High, so I would have been excited as well. So we have a good time at this party, and as we're leaving, we decide to take a little tour of Ludlow House since we knew we'd never be in there again since we're not members. We pop our heads into this lounge area, and guess who we see there? None other than the love of my life, Hot Greg from Katie's season of The Bachelor.
Hot Greg, who lives in New Jersey, which is not far from Manhattan.
Who's from New Jersey and lives in New York.
Okay.
And
he was like a favorite, and then he sort of blew up at the end, and you were a big fan.
Yes, I'm a big fan. Greg was my number one on Katie's season, and he was there with his Bachelorette BFF, Andrew S., who's also from Katie's season. So I absolutely lost my mind. Okay? I have not met any, I think, celebrities in my life, and I was just freaking out. They're so hot in person. Oh my God. It's just like
you're still with your boyfriend at this time.
Yeah, he's there.
Okay.
He's there. You know, he's actually encouraging me to go speak to them. And I'm like, no, I just can't. I can't do it. You know, I don't want to bug them. And one of the girls that we're with is like, oh, I'm going to go talk to them. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to go, I have to go as well. So we walk up to them, and Greg looks at me, asks for my name, reaches out his hand, and we touch.
Okay.
We touched hands. I touched Hot Greg's hand, okay? And so we shake hands, and then Andrew S. does the same. He asks for my name, and we touch hands. And they, I kind of blacked out, but I choose to believe they had great firm handshakes. And I quite enjoyed touching both of them. And so I'm standing next to Andrew S. This other girl's standing next to Greg. Andrew S. and I, start chatting. And he asked, like, what we've been up to that night. I said we were at the birthday party upstairs. And he mentioned that he and Greg had stopped in, but hadn't stayed long. And then Andrew S. asks me, quote, what are you up to after this? End quote. Which any 20-something knows is code for, I'm interested in banging you.
Oh, God. Okay, that's great.
So the moral of this story is I met Hot Greg and Andrew S., and they are both indeed very, very hot. And Andrew S. is into me.
So, and just to finish the story, that was the end of your evening with Andrew S. You did not.
No, I did go home with my boyfriend Andrew L.
Okay, he got the rose. That's
yes,
good.
he got the rose. It was a little touch and go there with our relationship, but he was very supportive of me meeting some Bachelor Nation celebrities. We also that day while we were in the city, we walked past Hannah Brown on the sidewalk. So it was, who Hannah Brown is.
I'm not sure I would recognize her if I walked past her, but I know who she is. Yes.
Well, my boyfriend's not a big Bachelor guy, but he even knew who Hannah Brown was. And so that was very exciting for us. It's the first time I've ever seen anyone from Bachelor Nation, and I saw 3 of them in one day. It was a good time.
Well, yeah, you got back to Philadelphia. You're sick. You think you might have strep or something. I wonder if just touching these Bachelor guys contributed to getting you sick. Goodness knows what would have happened if you had gotten any closer to Andrew S. Yeah, you might be dead at this point in time. So I'll say that. 2 other observations. I admire your boyfriend's courage and saying, "Oh yeah, go talk to those hot guys from Bachelor." And number 2, you've still not met any famous people. So let's proceed.
Okay, that's fair. They're famous to me. You know how I feel about Greg.
Okay.
All right. Should we dive into last night's episode? I know it won't be quite as exciting as my personal life, but beggars can't be choosers here.
Okay. Well, so this week they moved locations, which I thought was a highlight to me that they got out of Minnesota.
Me too.
They got to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, which seemed very, very nice, beautiful, warm. And by the way, I was looking on the New York Times online this morning, and Mexico only has 1.9 COVID cases per 1,000 people, while the United States has 36 per 1,000 people. So Mexico is doing something right, or they're not bothering to count their cases. Either one of the two. So they seem to be doing something right there.
Well, I thought it was a shame that they didn't take Michelle and the guys to Paradise. If we're going to Mexico, we might as well go straight to Paradise and just have our finale there.
No, it looked pretty close to Paradise where they were at. There were some beautiful beaches and in the zip lining. They had some pretty nice exotic location there.
Yeah, I'm just excited that we get any sort of traveling. I don't want to stay in the same location, and I'm getting kind of tired of Minnesota.
Okay. What sort of highlights did you pick up from last night's episode?
I enjoyed Cowboy Brandon. I thought that I did not expect much from him, seeing like his inability to skateboard. I was like, he's not going to do well with horses. And he didn't do that well with horses. He didn't do that poorly either, but I liked him in his interviews, tipping his hat, talking about how he's a cowboy. And I enjoyed him hopping on his horse and his horse immediately just riding him off into the jungle without Michelle.
Yeah, I sort of put Brandon the Cowboy as a low light in that he just seemed to be incompetent and just embracing the cowboy lifestyle a little too much for my comfort. So I did take note of that, but I didn't see it as a highlight.
Okay. I also enjoyed seeing Joe having so much fun on the zip line and letting loose. He was screaming and being loud, which we're not used to with Joe. And I also enjoyed himself. He was like making fun of himself at the dinner portion when Michelle was like, "I'm surprised, that you were screaming." And he's like, "Oh, well, I wasn't just going to sit there really quietly on the zip line and look all grumpy." I enjoyed that. We don't really get that goofy side of Joe.
Yeah, we like Goofy Joe.
Yeah, we like Joe in general.
Yeah. Michelle likes Goofy Joe. So a couple things that I put down. Although I did not enjoy Brandon the Cowboy, I did admire the fact that Brandon was willing to put it all out there, put his heart on the table. he's like the excited dog who, when you come home, like our dog, you show up and she's just like hopping around, jumping, barking. She's just so happy to see you. It's like, I didn't expect you to come back, although you come back every day. And Brandon strikes me as the happy dog who is going to be loyal, incredibly loyal. Will never leave her. Probably will always be by her side and make her insane if she picks him. But I admire his enthusiasm and loyalty. I kept wondering if Brandon owns any collared shirts because it seems like he wears T-shirts everywhere. Although I think to the rose ceremony he did dress up a little bit. And I must say I enjoyed the fantasy suite food fight.
Oh my God, that's disgusting. That was one of my lows.
Okay, well, I enjoyed it, but I noticed there was some sort of green drink that they were bringing in there that looked pretty disgusting to me.
Like a smoothie?
Yeah, yeah, some sort of green smoothie. I don't know. I don't know if they're drinking kale or whatever they're drinking, but I can't abide that.
Well, one of my highs was Nate and Brandon getting a little heated talking about whether it's best to go first or last on the fantasy suite dates, which I think it's pretty obvious you want to go first.
See, I sort of thought that you'd want to go last. Because it seemed to me that by the time the third one rolls around, do you really remember that much about the first? I don't know.
Well, if you're thinking that the lead is going to bang everyone in the fantasy suites, I would say you want to go first.
Well, I'm not sure that. Do you think there was banging going on in that?
Yes.
Well, I don't know.
You think Michelle's going to get engaged to a man that she hasn't boinked?
I don't know if she's going to marry a man that she hasn't boinked, but it seems like a lot of things happen between the end of the Bachelor show and whether a marriage actually occurs.
Yeah, well, I would have, before the episode, I would have guessed that Michelle would have banged both Joe and Nate. But it seems as though that was probably wrong.
As a dad, you're saying bang a lot today. It's sort of making me a little uncomfortable, so you need to tone that back a little bit. All right.
Welcome to the fantasy suite week, Dad.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I did notice that at the very beginning when Michelle was talking with one of the hostess, not Tasha,
Caitlin.
the other one, yeah, Caitlin. She was saying the cameras are off, so you get to ask questions and have those private conversations. So it just made me wonder what her intent was.
Well, I think that she can talk to people and have private conversations and then also be like, let's take our clothes off.
No, I know. I'm sure they can. I just wasn't sure. I didn't get a good read on that.
Okay, do you have any other highs?
My only other high was ABC is having a new show called Judge Steve Harvey, and I just can't wait for Kenan Thompson to do a send up of that on Saturday Night Live. So that's I'm interested in that. So they got me on that one.
Okay, that's not related to The Bachelor.
Okay.
Next, we have lows. And you already mentioned this, but Brandon and Michelle having a food fight in their hotel bed is disgusting. I'm a big advocate for a clean bed. Clean sheets, make sure you're clean when you get in a bed. This was absolutely repulsive to me.
Well, I would not be a a food fight person in bed if it's at my house. If it's at the hotel, and I will tip those people well, but I think they're going to clean up those sheets.
Yeah, but it was so messy, and it just seems rude to me to think that the housekeepers are going to have to clean up that extra mess.
They seem to be having a good time, so they seem to be having fun. I enjoyed that.
My other low, which has been like a new staple item for me in the Fantasy Suite episode recently, is that all the guys have to hang out in between the dates and see each other come back from the dates, and like the other guys like coming back looking all happy, and guys that haven't gone yet freaking out. And you just sit there and think, oh, did Joe just sleep with her? Like, what just happened? He looks so smug right now. The producers are doing them dirty like this.
Well, and you mentioned that you felt that Nate and talking with Brandon about who goes first, who's go last. You sort of saw that as a high. I guess I just saw the whole Nate being cocky, and to me he was just really trying to mess with Brandon more so than anything. I sort of saw that as a low because I still have questions about Nate and what his intentions are and whether he's in this for the long haul. So I put down as a low light Nate being cocky and just messing with Brandon's poor little head.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's a defense mechanism for Nate at this point because I think maybe he is freaking out a little bit and just doesn't want to show it.
Yeah, yeah, perhaps. The other low that I had is at the beginning when I guess Michelle was talking to Caitlin and talking about each of the guys. She was saying Nate has so much depth to him, and I was like, really? I just don't know if you're reading this one right. You might be taken in by his good looks. He's a handsome guy. He's a good talker. I'm not sure I've seen a lot of depth out of Nate.
I concur. Yeah, I don't see that much depth from Nate either. He seems like a player to me.
With that said, I'm not sure I'm seeing a lot of depth out of any of these fellows. But I'm old. What do I know?
I see the most depth with Joe. Totally unbiased answer there.
What? Just because he's like a quiet guy, therefore he must be deep?
Yes.
I fear that he's just thinking about that game against Iowa where he scored 28 points.
No. He's a deep man.
Okay.
I don't have any other lows. Do you?
No, we're good.
Okay. Moving on to the right reason. This might come as a surprise to everyone. I'm giving it to Brandon. I don't like Brandon, but he seems very in love with Michelle. Not a sustainable kind of love, but I think that he, treat her right and is very obsessed with her to a point that it would be annoying. And, I'm still not a Brandon fan, but I liked how much he was Team Michelle by being wary of Nate because I think we're all a bit wary of Nate.
Well, I actually gave my right reason to Brandon as well, in that of all the people, he seems the most sincere. He seems honest. He seems willing to share his feelings, and I agree with you. I think it would be wearing. I don't dislike Brandon. He just seems like a young person, particularly in relation to Michelle. What did you make of his move at the rose ceremony where he pulled Michelle aside? And I think that they led us to assume he was going to try to trash Nate, but he didn't. But he just said, "I'm really there for you, and I love you, and I'm going to support you, even if I'm going home." Blah 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 blah.
I thought it was weird. I don't think I liked it. Like, it did kind of seem like a Hail Mary to me, like Nate was saying. Like, and the fact that she was crying so much while he was doing it, I really thought that she was going to send him home.
Right then.
Yeah, right then.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that she decided then to send Joe home because I think she wants to be with Nate, and post show it'll be easier for her and Nate to be together if she's like, look, Joe was who I wanted other than you, and I sent him home early because I knew it was you at this point. And Brandon was never it for me. Like, you can see that it wasn't. Like, I think she did it so that she could have an easier goodbye next week.
Well, maybe an easier decision next week. I think it will be a tough goodbye, and that, as we said, Brandon's going to be a wreck. But when you join the show, that's sort of what you sign up for.
Yeah.
So what's your wrong reason?
My wrong reason goes to Michelle because she sent home Joe, which was a dumb move.
Yeah. I was surprised by that.
I was shocked.
I was shocked as well, and I think
From
Smart Money had Nate and Joe getting there to be the final two.
Yeah, from early on, I think we were like, it's Nate or Joe.
Yeah, so it was certainly surprising. I mean, they seem to have a good date, and and Joe is quiet and slower to open up, but they seem to have a pretty
But that's normal.
this is The Bachelor. There's not a lot of normalcy
But
going on here.
he told Michelle he was falling in love with her.
I thought he said what he had to say.
Yeah. He didn't
So
say that much. Well, I guess no, both Nate and Brandon said they were in love with her. But
well, she had to pull that out of Nate. I'm questioning that, but by like morning, I think he was saying that. Yes.
yeah, but like she only said she was in love with Nate. So it seems like it's going to be like a very obvious pick next week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had two wrong reasons. Number one, Tayshia giving advice on the overnight week, saying it's the most important week of all time, when it would appear that things from her show have not worked out that well with Zach.
Well, they were at that point. They were still good. They hadn't run a marathon together yet.
Well, she might have wanted to rethink the way that she played that, because it didn't work out. She might have chosen someone else. So anyway, and I also, like you said, I also put down Michelle, and I put it more because after talking about Joe and his real estate business, that she thinks that Joe is going to change the world, and that's the sort of person that she wants to be with, that they can change the world together. I think Joe is going to be playing a lot of NBA 2K on the computer. I'm not sure Joe is actually going to be changing the world.
Well, he's a nice guy, okay?
He is a nice guy.
I think they could have a better chance of changing the world than Nate.
They could live happily ever after. But what is Nate's a salesman of some sort, which shouldn't shock us. He can probably sell about anything.
All right, so we agree for the most part on our right reasons and wrong reasons.
We do.
All right, my MVP of the week is going to Joe, because I love this man and I will always choose him. And I think he handled his exit so gracefully, and he was very kind and articulate, talking about his feelings and how he was sad, and even if he wasn't showing it, like, he was still hurt. And I'm sad that we won't see him on our screens next week. And I think Joe should have been the Bachelor over Clayton.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think that's a good pick. And for some reason, I can just see Joe and Michelle being together 4 months down the road, 6 months down the road, when things crash and burn with Nate.
I don't think Joe's the type of guy that will backtrack for a girl. I think he's going to keep looking ahead.
I don't know. I mean, they messaged each other a while back. He ghosted her, and then he shows up on The Bachelor. So I don't know. I don't know.
He didn't get rejected in that scenario.
Okay. All right. Well, good. I feel bad for Joe. He seems like a good guy. Will Joe end up on Paradise Island, Chlamydia Island, whatever?
I don't think so. I think he's too good for that.
I hope that you're right.
I can see himself distancing from the franchise.
Well, that would make me respect him all the more.
All right. Do you have some fatherly advice to wrap us up?
Well, a couple things. Listening, very important. I think Michelle said that Brandon is a good listener, which I think is a great life lesson. I think listening to your significant other is something that is the foundation of building a strong relationship. So let's remember to be good listeners out there. And my observation is that sometimes Michelle, and it's not just Michelle, it's all of us, we hear what we want to hear. And if she hears that Joe is in her mind going to change the world, and I got the sense that she was pulling some things out of Nate in terms of him falling in love, and sometimes it's really hard to distinguish from reality and what you want the reality to be. So I don't know what the advice is. Just be careful out there, and don't always think that things are just the way they are, the way that you want them to be. You got to be able to take a step back and try to see what reality is. So that's my advice for this week. I had some advice about if you're going to be dating a girl with two other guys, and have an overnight romantic date, that you should go last. But you seem to disagree with that, so I'm gonna keep that one to myself.
Yeah, for cleanliness purposes, you can go first.
Fair enough.
All right, well, that's all we have for today. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Hopefully, I will be back to normal next week for our 3-hour finale.
It's not going to be a 3-hour podcast, right?
No. I don't think we'll have that much to talk about. We'll be like, oh, Nate won. Shocker.
Well, and if your health improves, maybe the mesh will let us do it in studio since you'll be home for the holidays.
That would be so fun. Well, we'd like to thank the Mesh for hosting our podcast. Check out all their other podcasts. They're super fun to listen to. And join us next time to hear about Michelle's finale from The Right Reasons and my dad's.